fence along the westerly and northerly side of the property, perimeter landscaping along the fence line and along the property perimeter. They're proposing to install what we call terminal islands that will be landscaped. And they're also proposing to, which is a good thing, 2 lighting fixtures for the parking lot that will be solar powered. This kind of gives you an idea of what it will look like when it's improved. The perimeter landscaping, the structured parking spaces, the terminal islands, the access entryway with the landscaping, the emergency access drive on Central Avenue. This is kind of what it looks like now. This is what we're hoping it will look like when it's finished down the road some. So that gives you a clear picture of what this application is focused on. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is present this evening to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Rich, did you have a presentation? If you could just state your name and your address for the record, please, sir.
Rich Smith, 725 North Ocean Shore Boulevard, Flagler Beach, Florida.
Okay.
I'm here to answer any questions. The applicant for beachfront. I think the improvements that we're offering with this expansion of the parking will really tie in the entire development. Along behind this comes landscaping for the parking lot, curb stops, new base, get rid of some of these potholes. We're moving the handicap area to the building side, whereas it's adjacent, or it's apart from the building. You have to cross over the line of traffic to get to the building, and we're solving that issue by changing the site plan to incorporate parking against the building. Other improvements are a 6-foot privacy fence, just like what has been done over at Oceanside, around it with the landscaping on the outside of the fence to enhance and try to soften up the fence area. Behind this comes additional investment from the owners to renovate the building as well. So this is a 3-stage project that will be coming before you all at different levels. So
Okay.
if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Rich at this time? We'll bring him back up here. There could be some questions from people in the audience too, Rich.
Sure.
Okay, Roseanne?
Can you just clarify the traffic flow for me? When you pull in off of A1A, is it 2-way traffic on each side there, or do you head west on the one closest to the building and then east?
Forgive me, some errors would have helped, but yes, it's 2-way traffic. The drive aisles are wide enough for 2-way traffic all the way around the circle.
2-way traffic all the way?
Yep.
Okay, Rich, let me open up the public input and.
Can I just ask
Sure.
one thing? Your emergency exit in the back, is that on your thing? It said it was just for golf carts?
No, it says emergency entrance for egress and golf carts.
Okay, sorry.
So it
Thank
would
you.
be in the event that we needed to
Okay,
send
right,
somebody
thank
out
you.
or have an emergency vehicle come in.
Anyone in the audience would like to comment on this project? Now's your opportunity. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Comments from the board? Any comments? Okay, the only comment I have is I'm happy to see this because whenever people park on A1A, right next to A1A in the right-of-way, whenever you pull out and make a left turn, it's 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, and I think this would actually enhance the safety as people leave or exit the restaurant, because I think now people will have more room to park inside rather than along A1A. So I'm happy that we're moving forward in this direction from a safety standpoint for sure. Any other board member comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I have one question. Sorry,
Joseph.
Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
On the, at the rear of the building where the loading zone is, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parking spaces. That backup space, there's no dimension, but is it like 22 feet, 20 feet, 18 feet? Does it meet our requirements, or?
Are you speaking about spaces 53 through?
Yep, 50
44?
through 44, 44 through 50.
It's actually greater than 24 feet.
Okay,
The dimension isn't there, but if you look at the 24-foot drive aisle to the north, next to the landscaped terminal island, you can see how much deeper that is over where it borders the loading zone. I'm not sure what that dimension is. We'll clarify that, but I'm estimating it's at least 30, 34 feet.
well, that's including the loading zone, the 10-foot there? Well,
No, I would say it's based on what I'm seeing here. I would say it's at least 30 feet to the loading zone.
okay. Is there any question or any issues with space 50 and the dumpster being right there as well? But as long as, I guess you had, if it's 30 feet to back up, then you can pull forward. You don't need the extra, the little space. It's just a question. I like the overall project, don't get me wrong. I think it's great.
Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion again.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of site plan SP 20-12-01.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
What?
We have a first and a second. Any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Item 5B, special exception SPEX-20-12-01. Special exception use request to construct a hotel in the general commercial zoning district as provided for in the land development regulations.
No, there's no PowerPoint for this item. Next item,
Okay,
if
item
we discuss it.
5A, Larry, would you open this up, please?
Yes, sir. This is an application for a special exception to construct a hotel in the general commercial district, the downtown area of Flagler Beach. The general commercial zoning district requires, has certain specified principal permitted uses, accessory uses, and also permitted special exception uses. A hotel use is listed as a permitted special exception use if the use is approved by the city commission upon a recommendation by the planning board. So that's why this item is before you this evening. There is a townhouse component as well, should this item move forward. The townhouses are a principal permitted use in the general commercial district. That particular land use would not need a special exception, but that is permitted by right. What I'd like to do is really just focus on the use. That's before you this evening. Generally, when we discuss special exceptions, which is 99 and 9/10% of the time, addressing a single-family residential request in a tourist commercial area, we go one step further than just looking at the use. The planning board does have the liberty to make comments about architectural style, make certain of the development standard criteria, et cetera. So essentially, they can comment on any aspect of the application for that special request. In this case, this item, if it is recommended for approval by the Planning and Architectural Review Board, there's a sister application which would follow this. And it's at that point that we should focus our attention on any questions that are related to the use. So what I'm saying is the development criteria is not applicable really in as to whether or not this should be approved for a special exception. It's a special exception use. We're focusing on the use. The next item, should the planning board recommend approval, would focus on the other elements that I've just mentioned. And the reason why I'm saying that is I just don't want to get into redundancy because some of the same questions you may have, which I understand, and the public may have, I understand as well. will be addressed with the next application.
Okay, Drew, do you concur with that?
Yes, and to put it very short, I think what Larry is saying is now you're just focusing on the use, you're not even thinking about what it's gonna look like, just does the use fit in this spot? That's the only consideration.
Okay, is the applicant here? You'd just like to make a short presentation, sir, and then I'll open it up to the public?
Yes, Joe Pasquale, 3604 Bayway, Cooper City, Florida. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I think as Larry and Drew mentioned here, we're concentrating on the use for this piece of property to have a hotel element on it. And also, after hopefully your approval of allowing a hotel on this site, we can go through our site plan and demonstrate how this community can work for you. Hopefully, I can answer your questions as we present that project to you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. At this time, I'll open up the public input for item 5B, special exception. If you'd like to comment on this hotel in the general commercial as a special exception, now's your opportunity to come forward. Anyone? Come forward, sir.
The next application is about the hotel, this is just what the land use for.
I just need a clarification. This is for a variance, for a use variance
No, sir, it's a special exception.
Special exception.
Different criteria
for this property?
for the property right over here.
Yes, same project, yes, same project, but there's two applications on the agenda tonight. So the one tonight is just for whether or not a hotel use should be allowed on the property, not focusing on what does the hotel look like or what are the components of it, just does the general use, should that be allowed on this property? That's the question on this application.
Okay, so it's not zoned for that currently, correct?
It is. Special exception means that it's not allowed by right. You have to come through an additional layer of review. But a special exception use is a use that is permitted by code upon a secondary level of review. So it's not like a rezoning. It is zoned for that. It just requires an extra layer of review than a principally permitted use.
Thank
That
you.
would be different criteria than a variance, sir. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? At this time, I'll close the public hearing. I just want to disclose that Larry and I spoke about this quite a bit, and there was a traffic study that was presented. It showed there was no significant impact. The survey in the packet, I wanted to correct. It shows North Central Avenue. It's actually South Central Avenue. I wanted to correct that on the record. And those were the particulars on this, other than general conversation. I wanted to get that on the record. If you notice the survey, it mentions north, but it's actually south. Central Avenue. Yeah. Okay, any comments regarding this use on the property as a special exception? Larry's laid out the criteria for a special exception use, and his opinion is that it does qualify as a special exception, and it meets those criteria.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to say also that I talked to Larry at length, and I also had conversations with Joe Pasquale and Brian Walsh and Zoe.
Okay. Zoe had called me, but I've not had any conversation. I did not return her call because I didn't think it was appropriate personally, but we did touch base initially, and that was the extent of the conversation. Any other public disclosures?
I have one. I spoke today with Larry about the project.
Okay. Larry
too.
Torino? Okay. Comments on special exception use? Any comments for Larry or for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
There's one question I do have, actually of the applicant, and it's in reference to the survey. And that question is, the survey shows 10 or 11 lots. And my question is, not that it affects anything this evening that's going to be discussed, but my question is, just for general knowledge, as to whether or not the lots have been bound or not. Are there still individual platted lots on that property, or have all the lots been bound to make it a single parcel? I'm sorry.
Just state your name for the record, Zoe, please.
Hi, I'm Zoe Forehand. My family has owned this property for many years. I believe originally, a long time ago, before the first hotel was there, it was many lots. I've never known it to be separated. I believe it's all one parcel and they're all bound together.
Okay, that document, should this move forward, that will have to be documented and validated.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. I had that on the next agenda item, that we bound the lots if it moves forward.
I don't think they have been, but it's
Okay.
easy enough to bind them through my
Right.
office.
Okay, any other comments from the FAR board? Questions for the applicant or for Larry? I guess my comment is, I never really understood why there should be a special exception. To me, whenever we did the charrette, I always thought that we wanted to promote walk traffic in the downtown corridor. So I didn't have a problem with it at all. I really don't even think it should be a special exception in the general commercial, which is in our core downtown area. Other than that, it's something we may address whenever we look at the LDRs. All right, I'll entertain any comments on this.
I'm just wondering if, maybe for the sake of the public, because I think could be some confusion on it. We have two types of commercial zoning in our city. We have tourist commercial, where if you're gonna build a hotel in tourist commercial, you wouldn't need the extra layer of us looking at it. It's just a principal permitted use. But in general commercial, which is generally a more intense use, for whatever reason, the way our code reads, it comes before us as a special exception. And I know that sounds confusing, it's just the way it is.
Do I have to say that again? Okay. Yeah, so I was just trying to help, it can be confusing with two types of commercial zoning. So that's why it's a special exception, even though general commercial is a more intense use really than tourist commercial, so, if that helps.
Thank you, Roseanne. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve special exemption 20-12-01.
Special exception.
Special, what did I say, exemption? Exception, sorry.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
First and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, just that we're recommending approval. We don't approve.
What?
We don't approve, we recommend
Recommend.
approval, so.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Okay, item 5C. Final site plan approval. Application request to construct a hotel and townhouses in the general commercial zoning district as provided for in the land development regulations. Same property. This is a final site plan approval request. Larry?
Yes, sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Penny, can you set up the next PowerPoint possible? Okay. No, that's the wrong one. That's the next one. There you go. Thank you. Okay, this is without question, the passionate item of the evening. It's an application for final site plan approval for a hotel complex, as well as a residential component for townhouses. I'm only going to go over a subject that I think is most important for the planning board and for the public to understand how the city, working with the applicant, came to the point that we're at this evening in whether or not you agree or favorable or unfavorable. I just want the public to understand that this just wasn't a situation of someone coming in with a set of plans presenting them and we putting it on the agenda and moving forward in that regard. There was a pretty hefty thought process involved, and I'll let others speak to that. But what I want to present very quickly, and then I'll turn it over to the property owner, and I believe obviously the applicant has a program to speak to as well. But I want to talk about two things: resources and methodology. Resources are the documents that we used that were employed to come to the final product that we're viewing tonight. And those three resources were the Flagler Beach and Flagler County Scenic Highway charrette, which was completed in February of 2003, some 17, almost 18 years ago. A downtown master plan that was completed in January 2006. And then our land development regulations, which are ongoing and a work in progress and being revamped as we speak today. And within the land development regulations, downtown design guidelines that evolved from the downtown master plan. In the specific area that we're talking about, there's 3 character areas in the mixed-use district of the downtown, and one is the A1A retail corridor, which is all along A1A. Then we have a residential component, which is over south and over by the Wick Line Center. And then we have the core area of the downtown, which is titled the Downtown Mixed Use District Character Area. And I want to go through briefly each one of those and just highlight what we extracted from each one and how that was utilized to derive the program that's been put together by the development team. First was, of course, the Flagler Beach, Flagler County Scenic Highway charrette. I'm sure there's some of those that participated in that sitting in this room this evening. The idea, obviously, was to be implemented in years to come, and the years to come, here it is 17 or 18 years later, and we may or may not move forward based on the outcome of what we're discussing this evening. But what came from that was to create an architectural design guideline that fosters the architecture and diversity in the city. Obviously, that was accomplished with the downtown master plan and the downtown design guidelines. Another objective was to preserve the view of the ocean from the top of the bridge while approaching town. Very important. And another is to reinforce Central Avenue as a traditional main street. So those are the 3 objectives of several that we focused on from the charrette. Turning to the downtown master plan, the objectives that were included in the master plan was to, whatever was being planned, whatever came forth in the future, was to make sure it was sustainable and that it added sustainability to the community. Another was to account for the impacts of regional growth, not only Flagler Beach, but impacts of what's on the other side of the bridge and what effect that would have on the city. Another is to consider safety and mobility identity. Obviously, mobility being means of transportation, so forth and so on. To look at the historic connection from the past, the present, and moving forward. Another large component was to look at economic opportunity. And lastly, to employ sound strategies, implement sound planning strategies. And lastly, we go to the land development regulations, more specifically the downtown design guideline regulations and the objectives of those. And the objectives read, to create a mixed-use environment that respects the traditional character of the downtown, develop a distinctive and attractive visual character that is unique to the city of Flagler Beach, establish an attractive, safe, and efficient traffic circulation system that encourages pedestrian mobility in a compact urban form. And that's very, very, very important phrase right there, a compact urban form. And lastly, to allow design flexibility in development and redevelopment of properties in the downtown planning area. Along with the downtown design guidelines, we looked at 2 components. I should say the development team did, but this was definitely impressed upon them. We needed to look at two characters: building design And I'm not going to go through each one of these elements, but if you can quickly look at those are the items we addressed in terms of the design of the building and what houses the property. And obviously, along with the building design was the site planning. And in particular was to encourage development that provides sufficient parking and vehicular connectivity and also pedestrian connectivity. So that being said, that concludes the methodology, the resources, how we came to address and approach the program. And I'll turn it over to Zoe. Thank you.
Hi again, everyone. A lot of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Zoe Forehand, a longtime local and business owner in Flagler Beach. My husband Bill and I have had Z-Wave Surf Shop for almost 33 years in one of the oldest buildings in town. It was built in 1920. I grew up here. My parents owned a real estate business and were very involved in the community. I have a real deep affinity for Flagler Beach and our way of life. I'm actually really protective of the unique qualities that make Flagler Beach such a rare place to be, and why I feel it's so important that this fits into the fabric of our one-of-a-kind seaside town. My dad and I sat on that very board y'all are at right now for over 10 years. He was a city commissioner here in the 70s. My mom started the Chamber of Commerce here. We both were the president of it at different times. We've been really involved in Flagler Beach is growing up, you might say, and in other aspects too. But as many of you know and just heard, a hotel sat on this very piece of land. The Flagler Beach Hotel opened on July 4th, 1925, and was a landmark here for many years. People were married in the top floor ballroom, high school proms were held there, and they were sad when it came down. But eventually it fell into disrepair in the early 70s and was subsequently torn down in 1972 with the intention to immediately rebuild another hotel. The city commission in 1973 actually approved plans for a 5-story project there to be built, and then for unforeseen reasons, it just never happened. As any visitor to our museum can see, it was a grand structure built by Dana Fuquay, who also built the Topaz, which was his home. And it was so solidly built out of coquina bricks that it took 3 days to knock it down, and it broke the wrecking ball in the process. We had the Flagler Beach Farmers Market there for about 30 years in the interim, knowing one day we would potentially resurrect this iconic structure to fit into the fabric of today's Flagler Beach. And many different groups contacted us during the time, but just weren't right. It just didn't fit, and it wasn't time. But then Hurricane Matthew came, and Hurricane Irma, adversely affecting our city and so many of its residents and businesses. And we knew, well, now it's time. Now it's time to try to bring the property back to life and to create that focus of downtown. And we want it to benefit the residents, the businesses, and visitors alike. So for the past 4 years, we've worked with many interested parties, trying to find just that right fit. We wanted to make sure the new hotel highlighted, not detracted from Flagler Beach, and that it incorporated all these necessary aspects that we knew had to be addressed. We've also met numerous times with Larry and these different groups over the years to see how this could be accomplished. And we want to sincerely thank you, Larry, for all your efforts, and the city staff for all their support. Larry has worked really diligently to make sure that this project fits within the guidelines of the city codes and has taken so much time to ensure this. In 2018, we came in front of this board with one such group to present some conceptual ideas. It was a positive meeting full of good input from the PAR members, and we've tried to incorporate those comments and thoughts into this plan today. We are really aware that we live in an amazing beach town like no other, and they're not making any more beach towns. So we didn't come into this lightly, and we want to impress upon everyone that thought. Last winter, I met with John Horan and Joe Pasquale to try to explain the vision we had for the property, incorporating all these different details. And then came COVID, which we know changed the hospitality business as everyone knew it, as it has changed the aspects of so many of our lives. So addressing some of these issues created by the pandemic in relation to this project, they'll be addressed and explained later. We think this project and the hometown team you'll hear from tonight blends so many of the desired aspects and hopefully is the culmination of that long search. please be assured that a lot of thought and time has gone into this process and that there's still details to work out, and we appreciate your time and patience while we strive to achieve this goal to bring back the central focus of Flagler Beach that'll benefit everyone. So I think there's a couple of slides. I've kind of already touched base on the one about the hotel. We've tried to incorporate some natural elements like the environment around us, and the color of the hotel was taken from our lovely spoonbill, which is one of our favorite birds. To be able to have a hotel with even a pink tone is really far-reaching and a positive goal, because I want it to look coastal, and I hope that it'll fit better and look more like a Florida vernacular that way. Is there a next slide? So this is what Joe has come up with, creatively taking into effect the thought process of many different elements. I'm going to let him explain that. I'll be happy to answer anyone's questions. If people feel like they have things that aren't addressed, feel free to contact me. You know, we want to be very transparent and hope that this will be positively received. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to have this possibly come back to Flagler Beach and benefit everyone.
Thanks, Zoe. Joe, did you have some comments? Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Just state your name again and address for the record.
Joe Pasquale, 3604 Bayway, Cooper City, Florida. Architect and developer of the project, and I want to thank Zoe for all her time. Thank Larry for all his time in putting this together. Good planner, makes you work, let me tell you that. I probably had more conversations with Larry than I've had with many city planners over my lifetime. I also want to thank Joseph for talking about the project with me and sharing some of his thoughts and such, and again, being very transparent about what we're trying to do here. I've been coming to this area since the early 80s. I was one of the first architects that worked up in Palm Coast with IT&T. So I've always loved this area. And when a fellow classmate comes up here, I follow them up. And I enjoy this area, enjoy working with people like yourselves. Also tonight we have Brian Walsh, who's also a colleague. Brian will be the general contractor on the project. And I think you all know John Horan, who I worked with for the last 5 years in this area. So that's a little bit about what we are. We look for some great opportunities. It's very difficult for developers to go out and purchase properties and hope they can get these approvals, hope they can do this. So I'm taking a little different approach as an architect, and I'm doing it myself, and therefore working with a great group of people. So I'd like to go through this briefly with you. Joseph mentioned to me that it'd be a good idea if you showed everyone how you got where you got, just like Larry spoke about the codes and the charrettes and all the components that we had to look at. So tonight we'll go through that very briefly here. You'll see some black and white photographs of the work that we've done, presented to Larry. Larry ripped it up, threw it back to me, and we kept on working on this. So I'm sorry I have to turn my back to somebody, so as I move forward here. What was important about this area here was to study the entire site, along with the park and the properties on the ocean. So the proper way of looking at this, and I'm calling it, yeah, thank you. As I'm looking at this, we have our subject property of 1.3 acres that we're here tonight to talk about. You have a wonderful Veterans Park that's adjacent to it. And then we also have our beach park that's part of the subject property to discuss. What to do with these three components? If you just looked at one component, you're missing the whole point of the difference between a hotel with the ocean view or a hotel on the beach. It's a big difference for the flag hotel companies to look at it that way. So what we wanted to do was combine all of this together. As Larry spoke about goals and items that we have to achieve through the charrettes that they've had here, we worked up our own goals. And most of the first of these have to, right out of what you've all written in your development guidelines. Pedestrian scale environment, eclectic beach town, residential neighborhoods in the downtown, create linkage between those, harmonious character, city historical and cultural heritage, Flexibility of site development principles, high level of aesthetics and the elements of that. Mix of residential and beach-oriented commercial uses, the reason for the residential component on the property, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have to recognize the design guidelines of the charrette. We want to create a mix of uses that enhance the economic development of the city, and also create an oceanfront resort versus a hotel near the ocean. Real big key to the project. We start off with a conceptual plan, a big sketch with a bunch of goals. Sorry you can't read it so close there, but we have goals like when I started work on it, I asked John, I says, where should the pool go? Probably in the south end of the property. Where should the entrance of the hotel go? Probably off of Moody Boulevard. So what happens is we develop those placements of these pieces as we go forward. We looked at views, if you can see the, if you can see the long views you have through the roadway systems and how wide it gets towards the end. The sun angle coming around like this to give sun to the pool and the pool decks. And then obviously the guidelines of facing Moody Boulevard and wrapping the community around. So through this study here, we took it a little further. And next thing you know, we work on a CAD machine. It looks like it's all done, but it really isn't. And we looked at how this could work, shared it with Larry. We actually went into models. We built a model of it. We modeled it on the computer so we get a feeling for the spaces and such. And then we created an image. And I created a contemporary image in the front with more of a traditional looking building. And I remember Larry telling me to have the city stay on the other side of the bridge. So from those points there, we went into the charrette. Let's take a look at what's going on. You can see on the right-hand side some of the comments that are there, such as, reinforce Central Avenue, traditional Main Street, very important. Pedestrian-friendly environments, okay? Solve drainage, upgrade and maintain parks, all these components that there's an opportunity for this project to move forward that direction. The downtown area, the center of Flagler Beach, we spoke about 2 3-story mixed-use buildings. They spoke about plazas, open spaces. Parking for these should be confined to the center of the block. We want to hide the parking. And as you look at the little vignette here that someone drew so many years ago, you can see how the U-shaped buildings are working, so we have views at the ocean. You see how they're delineating the park. So now we work on the final site plan that we've came up with. As you can see, we've laid out the whole resort area, inclusive of Veterans Park, inclusive of the beachfront park, inclusive of the enhancements we're doing. We're not here to talk about the park. The park could be another charrette with the community and the par board and council members, but it needs to be part of this overall community. The resort facility with its commercial use, it has a hotel use, and it has a residential use. Again, marrying up with the mixed use in your code. We also paid attention to our neighbors. We located the entry to the garage, which is underneath this whole complex, across the street, right between the 2 buildings that exist there. I believe it's a Great Fish Restaurant and the other building there. So we wanted to pay attention to our neighbors. Art in the park, public art areas. I think that's very important to enhance it. It could be done through the community. It could be have sculptures that people can donate. There could be a lot of opportunities to demonstrate some fine arts in those areas that we've selected. How this works is, as you all know, and believe it or not, South Daytona versus South Central, there's almost an 8-foot drop in grade. I know it's hard to tell, but that's what we've read on some local maps and such like that. So the garage is basically taking care of the parking requirements. At this present time, we have 117 parking spaces for the hotel, and then we have the 22 per for the residential. The garage has 100 and, I have to take a look at my notes now, excuse me. 142, thank you, Larry. And so the total parking provided on site's 116, and we're asking for 26 parking spaces from the pool, which is only 18%. But I want to share with you something that actually Larry and I spoke about earlier today. And how this is designed, excuse me, pressing too many buttons. That's what happens when you get clicker with buttons. The way we've designed this is that down in this area here, these are tandem parking spaces. These would be valet parking spaces for the hotel. And also these spaces here would be for the residents. So if you bought one of these units, you'd have a tandem parking space. Since you control the parking in the cars, there's no issues there from getting in and out. Also, hopefully there'll be some additional storage for a possible golf cart. The hotel itself needs 117 parking spaces. If this whole facility is rented out, as well as the condominiums, which are short-term rentals and managed by the hotel, I'm one space away from this hotel parking itself. So therefore, we considered very carefully parking. So therefore, if you have a unit that you own there and you're not using it and you're renting it out to a guest, they would use these parking spaces. Okay, either that or they would be empty, obviously. So the other thing we talked about as we went forward here is traffic and stacking distance, obviously when people are showing up for check-in or check-out. So we're utilizing the garage for check-in. You'll pull into the garage, you'll come to, you'll come to this corner here, you'll check in. We have the elevators right here to go up. And we also have a large circular staircase, which is one of the strong elements of the corner of the building. The purpose of the staircase that goes all the way up to the pool deck level is because we're beach town. We've got sand on our feet. Do we really want to walk through the lobby of the hotel? Do we really want to walk through the lobby of the hotel to get your surfboard out of your car, to get the shovels? So it becomes a good circulation point to keep the inside of the hotel as well kept as it could. So now onto the site plan itself. You can see that we've incorporated a central courtyard. We've broken the buildings up in accordance to the dimensions that are in your ordinance. And we have the commercial use and resort operations up front here with the main entrance off of Moody. I saw some previous applications where there's sometimes there are entrances or how do you get to the parking off of Daytona. I just couldn't see having Flagler Beach with a Daytona address. The second component is a commercial use. I call it a tavern. No, it's not a restaurant. It's a tavern. It's a community space. It could be used for social events. It could be offices, or conference rooms for business events. And it works very well with the hotel. The rest of the rooms wrap around down to Moody and across Daytona. These are 2 5-unit buildings. They're townhomes. They would be sold as a condominium. The hotel would manage these. So if you wanted to own one of these and rent it out, the hotel would take care of it just as a room. They would be a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath unit with a nice rooftop terrace. On the second floor, we have our pool and our sun deck, fire pits, covered seating, game areas, and service bar. That works well with the sun. It works well with the views, because if the pool was on the ground, you would be tucked in a little corner there, not seeing the great view you have to the ocean and to the park. So the pool, it also works as a little waterfall down to a little river, I call it, where children could play. It'd be a very shallow type of a pool, and more of a focal point, creating that ambiance that you are on the water, even though you're tucked back into the courtyard. On the third floor, we have the event rooms. Again, it could be divided into 2 spaces. It's 2,200 plus square feet with a wraparound balcony and service corridor. So the service downstairs could be a warming kitchen where this could be a catered events. And that would come right back up into the service corridor and elevator systems that we have in this area here. The rooftop terraces is an open terrace for the townhomes plus a screen enclosure that's covered in that area. All these townhomes, as you can see, would have views directly to the ocean as well as the interior courtyard. On the rooftop level, this is something that I've heard through working with Zoe and John and the staff, that we're looking to, obviously, how can we get up to the roof for the wonderful views? So we created a rooftop terrace, we're calling a utility room for the ADA. We have to get the elevators up there if we have the space. The elevators have to be in an enclosed, air-conditioned area, obviously, because of the salt in the environment. We have the toilet rooms, and we're also using the space for a screen for the heavy rooftop equipment that will be sitting on the roof, air conditioners and different components like that. So now what does it look like? And as Larry mentioned, we went through a lot of the guidelines. I finally found the actual report, finally got a copy of it. That was difficult. But if you notice, in this little drawing here, of the different designs of parapets, a little revival of architecture. We've got nice little porches. We've got some metal roofs, some spaces between units, and a little bit of a character of architecture. In this slide here, you can see the different types of characters. You can see how it's open between. You can see little turrets, these little identification, the announcements of coming into your projects. Something that's a little bit higher than the main building to give it some oomph, some good architecture, some good, I'm welcoming you here. We also looked at some very, very old stuff, and you can see maybe some things to do and some things not to do. We always want to do a build line, and the narrow sidewalks really don't work. And when you're doing a resort like this, we've got to walk around this community. We've got to create the pedestrian pathways through this community. Today's elements become bright and cheery. You can use a lot of textures with the ceiling materials, door materials, fountains, things like that that would add to the overall ambience of the community. We had our own design retreat. We have a number of professionals involved in this, and we sat down one day and looked at everything and started designing the components of the building. This was a little sketch of the entryway. This was a little sketch of part of the building and how we can possibly separate the components so we minimize the length of the buildings and such. So we come up with another sketch, and Larry says we're almost there. So as we move forward from this, you can see we've lengthened the buildings down to less than 150 feet. We have a very large recess that enters the courtyard there we're thinking about, but we're still not where we should be. So this is where we've come up with. What we did, as I mentioned just previous here, that we took components of the buildings. So this is a building of less than 150 feet. This is an ornamental tower that we're looking at doing an art mural on, okay, which actually is the elevator shaft and the stairway in that area. Our main entrance is here with some lovely awnings, which is part of it, and a tall type of arcade working around it to give the illusion of a two-story element versus a three-story element. From that point on, we go into the hotel rooms with a rhythm of balconies, a rhythm of, I call them roofelets, to create an interest versus a very straightforward, simple plane of materials. We need to create some animation in it. So then we go to the next component, which again is less than 150 feet in length. You can see how the parapets break up the massing of the mansard metal roofs. You can see the rhythm of the balconies that go up and down. You can see the little parapets that separate the buildings, and also a little texture of all coral stone bricks that would base some of the buildings here. Again, coming from all your design criteria that you have. You don't have to run a band around a building to define upper and lower. You can use these other elements. So we understand the intents of the code, not necessarily do exactly the verbiage of the code. So as that grew, we added the next piece to it, and you can see the opening between the buildings. This is a main opening off of Mooney Boulevard, and we definitely have to have a soft arch and a connection to our hotel. So as you're walking down the street or driving down the street, we'll never perceive this building being that long. You perceive the building as being these short lengths. The downtown element, again, this is the main corner of the building, the main entranceway. You can see our pool deck goes across. We brought in a little bit of the old hotel with the nice parapet designs, the awnings, and the stonework here. We have some awnings up on top with some nice columns and such for shade up in that area there. As we walk around this project, we've got to have different views and different images because it's a downtown and we want a mixture, all right? So as the building comes along Daytona, this is the Daytona elevation here, continuing the building, again, breaking it up with the parapet, so this is the garage entry. And because the land does slope the approximate 8 feet, we're berming up on this side to give a nice pedestal, a nice green landscape pedestal for the building. We also incorporated some benches and seating across here, so when I'm waiting to eat at the seafood restaurant, I got someplace to sit down. As you move down towards going up on Second, this is our little fitness center, sort of like that little leftover parcel of land that someone would build a little building on. And again, looking at the old type of developments where you started with one end of a street and kept on going. These are the townhomes here, 2 buildings. Again, the rhythm of roofs up and down, some nice massing, and we're anticipating three color schemes here with a light green, a light blue, and a light beige roof comparison, so that we create that beach tone effect here along with the colors that Zoe mentioned earlier on. This is an overall shot of the project. You can see how we're incorporated what we're calling the little beachfront here with the park and with the main structure here. A couple of things I'd like to share with you. We talked about the parking and how this would park by itself as strictly a hotel. The requirements for the residential is 2 parking spaces per unit, where the hotel is 1 plus 1 for every 5 from that point on. So the good news is that we believe we took care of the parking issue, we took care of the stacking issue. The other thing is that, we can say, wow, it's a big project. Well, yes, it is a big project. We're allowed to fill this site up with impervious area, which is what we're standing on and what's above us, up to 85%. And with the buildings and with the paver areas, we're at 82%. But believe it or not, this building only covers 49% of this site. You have 51% of this site open to the air. It's just how I have to do the calculation. Because obviously if I have a paver pool deck, I have to add that into my impervious area. However, we'll look at impervious pavers. There's a lot of different ways we can work that out. This is a shot from the bird's eye. You can see how the rooftop terrace can work with this utility core area of the bathrooms and the elevators. Great signage on the side of the building, nice wrapped around porch. It steps down to the corner, which is very important to give the different heights. If you took all the heights in this project from the average of 30 foot 6 inches to this point and a dimension of 10 foot 10 here, 27 and change back here from grade, your average height is 20 foot 6 inches. It's the up and down movements that allow us to get that type of an average. This is the shot of the inside the courtyard with the pool area. You can see the sunning deck area here. Underneath here would be the game area and the service bars, your wraparound terrace for your events, the tavern for additional events the hotel could have. This could be a wonderful display of artwork, areas if you have any type of art shows. We made the sidewalks nice and large around it to accomplish that. And again, the sidewalk to the park and across to the beach. So that's about it in a nutshell. If I read through all my notes, I'd probably be standing up here a little longer. But I also have Brian Walsh here tonight to answer any questions about construction and abilities and such like that, and John Horan to discuss a little bit about the taxes and how this can generate some income. On the bottom of this page here, you can see the names that are incorporated in here. Brian's collage, we have CPH, who's a local civil engineer. I've introduced a hospitality architectural firm that I work with. We have interior designer who's already approved by major hotels. We have a land planner, landscape and hardscape architect who's done work in the Keys and the Bahamas. And then it's just my little company here that I enjoy doing this type of stuff for cities like yours. So from that on here, I'll let Brian say a couple words and John will end it up. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Brian Walsh. It's 3461 North Ocean Shore Boulevard. I don't have the exciting part of the presentation. Joe just did that, and I'm sorry, I'm turning my back to you guys. I have the boring thing, but it's important to know that somehow we can get these pretty pictures built, and that's what I'm here to discuss. I'm the president and CEO of the Collage Companies. It's a construction management design build firm that is located in Lake Mary, Florida. We do work all around the southeast, but the large majority of our work is in the state of Florida, and a good portion of our work is hospitality work. I want to briefly just talk about three things tonight, but the first two really have nothing to do with building. It has to do with my excitement of this particular project. I have had a home, my family's had a home up here for the last 30 years, and my wife and I just built a new home a quarter mile north of that, which we plan on spending a lot more time. So this is a place that we consider home. We consider this our downtown as well. And we have a great concern, just like everyone in the room, that Flagler Beach grows and prospers, but it does it in a special way. And it does it in a way that it does not lose the ambiance of why we're all here. And that's really the only reason that I would be involved as a builder of this particular project. The second reason is we're not typical contractors. As I mentioned, we're design builders. I had the pleasure of going to school with Joe Pasquale and your esteemed board member, Joseph Pizzulli. So I understand what they're trying to do. I have great respect for the amount of time that has gone into this project to make it a human-scaled project, to use the eclectic architecture, the things that are good about the state of Florida and St. Augustine and Flagler Beach, and incorporate that into the design. I love the outside space and the inside space and the use of color. Those things make a big difference. The mission statement for our company is to build projects that strengthen the foundation and fabric of our community. Zoe mentioned the word fabric 2 or 3 times in her presentation. This is a project that does a great job of incorporating itself into the fabric of downtown Flagler Beach. This would be a huge asset to our community, and that's why the second reason that I'm excited to be involved with it. Now, in regards to the construction side, again, we have done hospitality projects for the last 40 years. We've done projects all around the state. This is a complex project, but we currently have 3 projects that are underway right now of the same size and complexity. So we're not concerned about that. We're a company that can get this done. We have a $100 million bonding capacity, so this can be a bonded job. We have great relationships with banks and insurance companies. We have a great safety rating. Those things are important when you're looking to get a project built in a downtown area. The other thing we understand is the complex components of this job. Joe mentioned the parking garage. Well, the Hyatt Hotel that we're building right now in Volano Beach has a parking garage underneath the hotel. 3-story hotel. The pool is on the second floor deck, just like this is. We understand what it takes to do the dewatering and the waterproofing, the foundation systems, helical piles, or any of those type of things are critical to understand. We also understand the potential need of underground retention. We've just installed one of the largest in the southeast StormTech system, which is an underground retention system for the city of Altamont Springs for the Westmont Park. So we understand that. And I think the other thing that we understand that we currently have, which we're very excited about, is 2 urban parks that we're building right now in downtown Orlando. One is right next to the Citrus Bowl, and the other one is in Creative Village, which, if you know, it's the downtown campus for the University of Central Florida. And why that's important is we understand what it takes to work in a very tight situation. There's not a lot of room here for staging materials and delivering materials. So it'll be our utmost importance to maintain safety, maintain traffic control, do the things we need to do, because we understand that we're going to be working in a neighborhood with businesses and residences all around. This is an exciting project. Again, for me, this is one of those hallmark projects that you sort of work, especially in your own hometown, that they hope you get to, that you could do someday. For me, I'm very excited about this project, and I think our team so far has done an exceptional job to be able to take an exceptional piece of property and make it an asset to Flagler Beach.
Thank you, John Haran, 209 South 4th Street. And I just want to say it's been a real privilege to work with such a dedicated team from ownership through construction, engineering, architectural, and the developer, Joe. I just have got to say that in my career, it's one of the best teams I've ever been involved with. And I'd like to just bring something to our attention that I've given you all a handout just in connection with taxable revenue to our city. And one of my thoughts was one of the best ways to serve our citizens and protect our homes and businesses is through low taxes. So what I wanted to do is just show through that handout that I provided that the ad valorem tax increase will exceed the present taxable revenue by $135,000 a year to our city. And I believe I've actually been conservative in my evaluations. I think I was a little under about 10% of what I showed on that calculation. And I didn't compute any of the CRA dollars that would be coming into. I just felt that I can get to those calculations in maybe the next go-round. And one of the things I also noted in that calculation, it would bring about $125,000 a year to our school system as well. The town, we've seen a need for improvement in our water systems and our sewer plant, and $135,000 a year would most certainly go a long, long way to handle any debt for any improvements along those lines. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention that we would be really looking at about $135,000 a year in income to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, at this time, I know we're going to have a lot of questions for the applicant, but I'd like to go ahead and open up the public input at this time. If anyone has any comments, you're welcome to come forward. If you ask any questions, we'll try and get them answered for you after the public input is closed. At this time, we welcome your input. And please limit it to 3 minutes.
Rick Belhumeur, Flagler Beach. I had 2 questions. The rendering here shows a drop-off area on Central, whereas your parking drawing shows angled parking there. So I was curious which way that was. And then going down 2nd Street, which now has curves in it and so forth, according to your rendering, does that mean that 2nd Street will get straightened, made straight, and actually adding more parking spaces? I think it's incredible what you've done with your drawings. And you're literally adding parking spaces as opposed to removing any. But there are the 2 questions I have.
Thanks, Rick. Next speaker.
Scott Fox, 108 Lantana Avenue. 5 years ago, I made the decision to call Flagler Beach home. I invested the future of my business, family, and livelihood to the charm and beauty of Old Florida. I hope in my short time here, it is known that Flagler Beach has become my heart and soul. My opinions and my decisions regarding the city have always been about preservation of the lifestyle. Like the majority of you, I did not grow up here. I was born in South Florida with stops in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, Tampa, and Orlando. I know the burden of overdevelopment, and in no way do I support recreating that here. However, I do believe in history and preservation of origins. I also understand economics and the need for controlled growth. It is no secret that I have a business here, and I'm also the acting vice president of the Flagler Beach Business Bureau. My opinions here today are my own and not on behalf of anyone other than myself. This project will fill a much-needed void in a lack of quality lodging, which supports our greatest revenue stream, and that's tourism. The irony here is that the majority of our current residents discovered our beautiful beach in that very manner as a tourist. So how does this affect our businesses? Well, the hardest thing for me to do as a resident and a business owner is to invite friends and family to visit our beach, only to send them to the Hammock Dunes or Palm Coast or St. Augustine due to our lack of inadequate lodging. That hurts business for all of us. I know John and Zoe have touched on a lot of what this project does bring. But I want to talk a little bit about Zoe and why I believe this is the right person and the right team at the right time. Zoe and Bill Florian have worked so hard on ensuring that this project fits the fabric of Flagler Beach life and the original hotel that this city was built around. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say a negative word about Zoe, and quite honestly, she has inspired me to be more active in helping in our community through volunteer efforts and philanthropy. There isn't anyone else I would trust more to execute this project to ensure that its integrity is kept local. Thank you. Sorry, I can't breathe in this thing.
Thank you, Scott. Next speaker?
Hi, everybody. My name is Brad. Last name is LeBate. I own property at 508 and 509 South Central. I love the project, okay, but I'm looking kind of the bigger picture here. And Central is one of our main thoroughfares. And if you make that a one-way street, you're going to have to do a lot more engineering to make sure the traffic flows work. We have a lot of problems with Daytona. It's a thoroughfare, but you have stop signs on the adjacent streets. I almost get hit every time I travel that street. I don't even go that way anymore. But again, you have to look at the totality of the project here. You can't look at just this by itself. You have to look at the surrounding area to understand, by making it a one-way street, what will be affected. Another thing is golf carts are limited to certain streets. You have to cross 100 down on Flagler Avenue. If you make this a one-way street, then how are you going to get golf carts in that section? So you're going to have to figure out a way to make it a little bit more, shall I say, golf cart friendly. I'm sorry, this mask is not good. I'd like to know the amenities. What is the community going to get out of this? Are we going to be able to use the bar or the restaurant, or is this a resort where it's only for the people that are staying there? It's things like that that have to be worked out. But, you want to make it so that the residents are getting something out of this. If it's going to be a resort where only people that are staying there can use, the restaurant or the tavern, then, that's something that's not positive. So, sorry, I'm running out of breath here, so thank you.
It's okay. Thank you. Next speaker?
Steve Daly, I live on off 17th Street North. I just have a question about the overall height. I'm trying to understand the 35 feet, and then it gets an extra 10 or 15 feet up, so the visual will be bad, I would think, overall. And I'm trying to understand the water drainage we have in the city is a problem. So you're going to go to underground parking, which obviously takes away drainage of water somewhere. So the water has to go somewhere when it rains. So I would think the water drainage issue should be something that should be studied really well. Other than that, a lot of it looks really nice. I just think to make sure that the architecture doesn't look South Florida, it looks Flagler Beach, because you can go to Ormond by the Sea, Ormond Beach, Daytona Beach, all that way up, and everything starts looking one way. This can't look like them, or you're not Flagler Beach anymore. You got to make a blend with the pier and with the surf city idea instead of something new and flashy like South Florida. That's the way I see it. So the thing with the water, and then, like I say, the overall height seems to be overwhelming coming across the bridge. And you're going to go way high, way big, and you were talking about land usage or drainage or whatever, that 50%, 85%. You've covered 100% of the acreage from the outside. So you're putting a big block of whatever, cement in a big space, and it just looks bad that way. You've not gone green and made it small and it fits in. It's big. So overall, I just didn't like that one part of it.
Thank you, Steve. Next speaker?
Hello, Ted Barnhill, 1358 Lambert Avenue. We own commercial property across the street, and We have a motel. We have a variety of things. I think this is a great proposal. I think it appears to be well-designed with a variety of features that are very attractive. You have downtown, higher income residential features to it that will be very attractive in the center of Flagler Beach. I think it's appropriate to have a high-quality residential hotel type of opportunity right in the center of Flagler Beach. All of us have family and friends that visit. They need a great place to stay, to enjoy themselves whether they're I think it's a terrific idea to have the parking, a lot of it underneath the hotel. That will minimize the other parking issues which are very real in Flagler Beach, which, deserve to be considered. When you look at Flagler Beach, and we love it, there's a variety of old, low buildings, 50 years old, 60 years old. I'm renovating one that's 100 years old across the street. And so I think it's time that Flagler Beach had a attractive new construction that adds commercial space and residential and hotel space in the center of Flagler Beach and provides jobs for people that badly need jobs. We have very few really good paying job opportunities in our town, and so I think that's a feature that's also very attractive. So I'm highly supportive of the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker?
Good evening. I just have one quick question. My name's Greg Spaduto. I live on 2001 Palm Drive, or just over the
What's
bridge.
your name?
Gregory Spaduto.
Greg?
And what is the high point of this project? Is it over 35 feet, or does it stay within the 35-foot rule?
We'll address that, sir. Thank you for your comment. Next speaker?
Hello, my name is Ken Aston, Flagler Beach, Florida, and I'm also a commercial property owner in the downtown area. And I, like Mr. Barnhill and some of the other speakers here, support this project. I think this is exactly what this city needs. Not that Flagler Beach needs anything, but I really think that this is the type of project that needs to happen in this town. I did have probably two questions to be answered later for the developer. But Zoe, I wanted to say, great job. You incorporated all the right elements into the design. I want to ask the developer if he owns any hotels like this now. And if he doesn't, has he built any like this before? And I want to know if there's any plans to affiliate this with a national chain. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Amy Lukasik. I'm the Executive Director for Tourism for Flagler County, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity also to educate the community. First, I just want to say how lucky are we that the owner of this property is a true Flagler Beach local, whose family has been so instrumental in creating what Flagler Beach is today. She has thought of every detail with care, sensitivity, and consideration of the community. And last time Zoe and I spoke, she even is very particular on what type of soap is going to be used in the room, that it's environmentally friendly. So she has left no stone unturned. So Zoe, she could sell the land to someone that wouldn't take all this consideration into account and build a hotel that could take us into a very different direction. And we want this type of passion and personal interest behind this type of project. There's no denying that tourism is the heart of Flagler Beach and what drives the economy and contributes to the quality of life. And just so the public knows, there is a bed tax that is imposed for anyone that stays in a short-term rental. And those funds are committed back into marketing and advertising the county, but also into promotions such as the Dodge the Dunes campaign. We contribute to the Flagler Beach Historical Museum, the Pledge to Prevent campaign. And yes, the tourism office pays for the 4th of July fireworks, $25,000 each and every year. And I should say the tourists pay for those fireworks. We also contribute to capital projects into the community, such as pier improvements and repair, over $450,000, and a $8 million beach renourishment bond. So with all that said, hold on, I wrote so many notes. Yes, so I was writing as people were talking. So what Mr. Horan said, we will continue to generate that annual bed tax from this project, and we will continue to reinvest it into the community. And I'll leave you with one last note. As of 2018, if tourism did not exist in Flagler County, each household would have to pay an additional $301 per year in their taxes to maintain the current state and local tax levels. Just so you know, tourism imports taxpayers.
What was your name, ma'am?
Amy Lukasik.
Amy. Okay, thank you, Amy. Next speaker.
John Ludrai, South
John.
23rd Street, business owner in Flagler Beach. I think a hotel is needed in our town. Been here for a very long time growing up, and I'll never forget calling Zoe's shop, asking about the wave height. There's always pretty girl working there too, so it's kind of exciting for me. Ultimately, if Zoe was not behind this project, I would be a lot more skeptical, but just to kind of mirror what everyone else has said so far about her, she truly cares, and that's what we need. We need passion, we need positivity. And I'm excited tonight that there isn't so much negativity and that we're a little bit more open-minded. If this is legal, God bless America, welcome with open arms. If it's not legal, I assume that you guys are gonna do your job, and there's no one better than Larry Torino. I appreciate all you guys taking this into consideration, and thank you, Zoe, for making this happen.
Thanks, John. Next speaker. Last call.
Oh, losing my glasses. Sharon Dietrich, 3 Bird of Paradise, Palm Coast. So I have known Mr. Horan for over 17 years. I've grown up here, grew up on 404 South Central. Zoe is a staple of our community. And if she wasn't, I mean, I'm gonna reiterate what everyone has said, if she wasn't behind this project, I think we would all have a little bit of a different outcome and a different thought process behind it. You know, I've heard some comments and some thoughts of, we don't want to lose Flagler Beach's charm. And I think all of the developers and everyone that's been involved has really taken that in consideration to even bringing back the original design of some of the Flagler Hotel. It's, as we've heard, a great revenue source to the county, to the city. And for young people, for myself, it also opens up a door for growth for us. You know, we hit that glass ceiling in Flagler County where if you're not working for a bank, if you're not working for a corporate, or you're not working in Jacksonville, my fiance actually travels to Jacksonville because there's just not the revenue source to support our household. So I think something like this would definitely bring that opportunity for young people. I think it's a great idea, and you know, hearing the positive feedback from a lot of the people here, it's great. And I know the concern is to keep that charm of Flagler Beach, and I think they're doing a great job at capturing that.
Thank you. Next speaker?
You want name? Does it matter?
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Okay, so Higgins, Arthur Higgins, outstanding, it looks like an outstanding project. I just want to make sure that professionals told Zoe and mentioned certain issues. The relationship between the finished floor elevations and the parking garage and sea level, because we're at the bottom of the elevator. Yes.
Maybe you want to
Sure.
ask off.
I just want to make sure everybody thought of these things, and the property owner knows about this and has considered it, so there's no skeletons in the closet. Relationship between the,
Could you repeat that again, just to make sure?
probably not. Just want to make sure Zoe has been given the opportunity to take into consideration, she's going to be the property owner, correct? Just a couple issues from my experience in life. The relationship between the finished floor grade of the basement concrete slab in the parking garage and sea level. And at the bottom of the elevators, you're going to need an elevator pit and a pump, a mosquito pump. If there's going to be any additional requirements for sewage, wastewater disposal, or water requirements for domestic water. Fire lanes, fire hydrants, has it been inspected and approved by the fire official, construction official, the type of construction, as they mentioned, type 1 construction based on the International Building Code, and dumpster issues, where are the dumpsters going to be? And that's about it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Last call. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, yeah, let me close the public hearing, Joe. Okay, we've had lots of comments. Let me make sure I got them all, Bonnie. Okay, some of the questions, all right. Rick asked about the drop-off versus angled parking. Second Street made straight increase in parking spots. Scott was positive in his remarks. Brad asked about a central one-way, golf carts, bar open to the public in the tavern. Steve was concerned about the height and retention. Ted made positive comments. Greg was concerned about the height limit. Ken made positive comments, asked if there was any hotels similar to this or built like this by the builder. Affiliate with national chain was raised. Amy was positive, John was positive, Sharon was positive. Mr. Higgin asked about finished floor grade and versus sea level, elevator pits, sewage and water, fire lane, construction, will it meet code, and the dumpster. Okay. All right, Joseph, if you could come forward, let's address some of these, and then we'll bring it back up here. And I'm sure we've got lots of comments up here.
Wonderful, thank you. The drop-off area, Rick, what went on with that is Larry mentioned about some parking spaces there in the drop-off area, so in between us drawing pretty pictures and doing the site plan and such, I decided to go back to the diagonal parking, and we'll probably have a spot there for the hotel. That area is, again, another check-in area. It's a area where, an Uber can pick you up and make it convenient for people who want to travel someplace else, not take their automobile out. Second Street being straight, we've got to do a lot of survey work out there to determine where these roads are within the right-of-way. And as I mentioned, the 45 diagonal parking will not fit into a 50-foot right-of-way. So we're going to have to work out these design issues as we move forward with that. And we're happy to help out with that type of situation. Scott mentioned all good businesses and such. Brad had some traffic flow questions, which is very critical because there are a lot of do not enters and one-way signs here, and that's something that we definitely have to look at as we move forward with the project. Amenities, oh yes, everyone's welcome. is not going to be just shut down and closed off. I think it'd be a wonderful place to share with family and friends that come there, so we'll be open to your residences. And in terms of the using of the facilities, the pool and stuff, I'm assuming just like any hotel, if you have a guest there, you can share those types of things. Let's see, Ted, height, water drainage, no South Florida details coming across the bridge. As I came across the bridge tonight, as I've done many times, I specifically looked at your view corridor, which is wonderful down Moody Boulevard. What we all don't realize is all the sable palms and the buildings where the seafood restaurant is actually blocks this piece of property. So you don't really get to see the ocean across this piece of property from coming over the bridge. You actually have the gorgeous view corridor. With this building lining up that corridor, is just going to strengthen that view much more. Water drainage and height that Steve brought up. Our proposal demonstrates a water retention use underground in the existing Veterans Park. In terms of the elevation of the slab in the garage, we're hoping that's a little bit above sea level. Obviously, we have to do some borings and find out where that water table is. As I mentioned to you, if 1 and Central is, let's say, 19, 20 feet above sea level, and it drops off 8 feet, I'll still be above the water table as Daytona. You don't notice Daytona flooding at that location in your heavy storms. If we have to go down a little bit more, we've done a number of garages under underground and waterproofing of those areas. Gregory talked about height of the project, and I think somebody else did, so let me get my notes here so I can give you some accurate information on that. I mentioned the elevator and the stairs located at that ornamental tower that we're calling. The roof of the elevator has to be 12 feet above the last landing, i.e. landing or floor. So the roof of the elevator itself is 43 foot 2 inches. Okay. The roof terrace, where we're providing access to the roof terrace above the 3rd floor, is at 39 foot 4 inches. That's what you're standing on top of. The roof that the majority of the hotel is at 30 foot 6 inches. It does drop down through the hotel room areas where we're dropping some ceiling heights versus the main lobby area. The townhomes the mean roof of the stair tower that goes up to the terrace roof is at 27 foot 4 inches, and the lower roof is at 21 3 inches. Average height around 24 foot 6 inches of the townhomes. Again, if you took the lowest levels of the fitness room, the pool deck area at 10 foot 10, and you spoke about the continuous 30 foot 6 element that runs around the whole building, you add those two together, divide by 2, you end up with 20 foot 8 inches. The other thing to recognize is that in response to the city wanting to use a rooftop terrace, we do have to get ADA and handicap people there. We just can't disregard that. So that's why the elevator goes there, as well as the space that has to be enclosed air condition wise. You don't want people out on the deck with any inclement weather that comes down and funnel into a little tiny lobby to get on an elevator. You need some space there. And also you need bathrooms up there and other types of uses. So that's how that space has been developed to work there. Let's see here. Amy Turris, John Business, and then the questions on finished floor elevation at sea level. Elevator pit, yes, we recognize that. The sewage, we understand sewage, the fire lanes, all that type of stuff would be developed as we move forward. Dumpster, there is no dumpster. Well, there is a dumpster. There's actually a trash compactor in the garage. and there's a trash chute that goes to the service area of the project. So all trash would go down into the garage. The residents who lived there would take their trash to the garage and put it into a dumpster in the garage. We'd work it out with the local trash company, or if the city picks it up, to have management roll out their so-called dumpsters. They're not, when we have a compactor, you can compact a lot of trash in a very small area. We do that with a lot of downtown sites, and works very, very well. I think there was a question about what I've done and what our team has done. The reason we have a team is because we all haven't done all of this. And working with Brian Walsh with Collage brings a lot of expertise to building this hotel. I've done projects that are, design build projects that are 400 types of units, tall buildings and such. So my experience of putting the team together as a developer and architect and picking the right members of the team is very, very important. We all just can't do it alone. We have to do it as a team. I hopefully covered them all, Chairman.
Okay, you don't have to answer this question, but it was raised. Would this be affiliated with a national chain? It's up to you whether or not you desire to answer that question.
Okay, no problem.
I do want to divulge to everyone that we are in like confidential negotiations with different brands to see if this could somehow fit into one of their categories without usurping the uniqueness of the property. So that might be a possibility, but rest assured that's something we're trying to control and make sure it works for everything. So there's no details right now that are available. And also too, please understand that if it did go that path, there's a whole design approval process they all have, even if they do what's called a soft brand approval, where basically it would say be the Flagler Beach Resort or Flagler Beach Hotel by a certain company. And that brings in their reservation system, yet lets us maintain our unique characteristics and charm. So that's possibly in the works.
Thanks, Zoe. All right, par board members, I've got some comments for both Larry and also the architect, some questions. And I'm sure the par board member has several questions too. Joe, could I ask you some questions, or maybe you could come to the podium, and I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between you and Larry Torino.
That's fine, thank you.
I spent probably a couple hours with Larry on the phone today discussing some things, and I wanted to ask some questions, and I'm sure the rest of the par board has several questions. I know last time Zoe came before us, we had talked about a conceptual, and it seems like the parking pool was going to be invaded by 60 parking spaces. This time, the request is only 26, so it's quite a bit less than last time, which would allow for more future development or redevelopment of local businesses, which I think is important. I hate to see one project zap all of the redevelopment possibly for the business community surrounding in the downtown area. So I do feel positive about that. So I think the underground parking is a plus if it can be worked out. I asked Larry Torino, and I think I'm quoting you correctly, Larry, by angling parking, we'd be picking up an additional at least 6 spaces. Would that be correct, Larry?
It dependent upon how that situation is addressed on Central Avenue that Commissioner Belhumer mentioned. We're waffling back and forth as to a drop area or angle parking. In all things being considered, and even discussing this with you, to me, it's more advantageous for the city to maximize the number of on-street parking spaces, and particularly with this facility, by having a primary check-in in the garage, to me, it minimizes, I haven't really discussed this with Joe, but I think it really minimizes the need for a drop area out on South Central Avenue, be more effective with it, parking spaces.
And I agree, Joe. Whenever we developed the parking pool, and I know, you weren't around then, but we were very specific that the parking pool, which is city right-of-way, we would not reserve any parking spots for any one business. It would be open to the public. So the concern I have is if we do have a drop-off area, we're actually reserving parking spots for the hotel. That wasn't the intent of the original parking pool. So I agree with Larry. We discussed a little bit about having a drop-off downstairs in in the hotel parking area. Because what happens if we were to consider this, the next business would expect the same criteria. And I'm not sure personally that I would want to go there because, it just creates a problem. So I just wanted to mention that on the record. That was a concern that I had. Larry and I, Torino, discussed the building height because that's in the charter. And it's very important for the public to understand that this does meet our building height in the city of Flagler Beach. And I wanted to just confirm that with Larry Torino on the record. And I also talked to Drew about that because I guess Drew and Larry had talked about this. There's no way that this board would want to violate our charter or recommend violating the charter. So Larry Torino, could you address that a little bit if you don't mind,
Yes.
sir?
As Mr. Pasquale alluded to, the highest point, at least in my opinion, the highest point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, I believe the highest point is actually the ornamental wall, which may top out at approximately 44 feet, 45 feet max. From what I've seen, we have a dimension for the wall at the 30-foot level because an ornamental wall is allowed, but any signage that's applied to an ornamental wall that exceeds the building height of 35 feet must be below that. But nonetheless, building height was very important. One gentleman spoke to that earlier, and let me try to explain it this way. Building height is measured dependent upon the roof style. For this type of, for a flat roof, it's to the deck. So a deck must be at 35 feet. If it's a gable or hip type roof, it's the mean average between the ridge and the eave, the highest point and the lowest point. So for sake of speaking, as an example, we have a roof with a pitch that is vertically 16 feet from the eave to the ridge. The mean average would be at 8 feet. So at that 8-foot mark, that has to be at 35 feet or below. And this is very important. The overall height of that structure can exceed 35 feet. As a for instance, many single-family homes, 3-story, that have become more popular here in the community of late, invariably, the overall height is generally 42 to 43 feet, mean average being 35 because of the gable. We applied the same standard to this facility. There are exceptions to the building height, and those exceptions include 3 different elements. One is a tower, second is an ornamental wall, and third is mechanical equipment. The word they use is mechanical appurtenances, and that 25-cent word bothers me. I really don't know what it means, but I'll just say mechanical equipment. In this case, the elevator shaft. So obviously the elevator to the top of it has to clear the last floor, so that extends approximately 42 feet 9 inches. That's allowed. The wall that houses the Flagler Beach Resort signage, if that comes to fruition, as an ornamental wall, cannot exceed the building height by more than 40%. So if you have if 35 feet is your building height, you have 43 or 44 feet to the height of the ornamental wall, you're looking at approximately 20%, 21%, well below the 40%. So these different elements were applied to this scenario, looking both at the building height where it applied and utilizing exceptions to the building height in the appropriate places, and everything fell within those limits. I questioned that myself just to be certain. I communicated with our city attorney and included in my staff report my justification, and also cited from the land development regulations those sections of the code that are applicable to this situation. And if he wasn't on board with me, obviously I would not have made the recommendation that I made, which is that it is consistent and compliant with our code. The city attorney reiterated that same finding to myself. So I feel comfortable both professionally and with legal opinion that we are honoring the 35-foot height limit based on the language and the regulatory sections of the Land Development Code.
Drew, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I'll leave the math part to Larry because that's not my forte. But as far as the interaction with charter and code, I think what's important for everybody, both audience and board members, to understand, once you put 35 feet in your charter, it gets really easy to get focused on that. But one thing your charter does is it specifically references your land development regulations. So it talks about this term building height as described by the land development regulations. So all of those calculations, all of those exceptions that Larry just told you about, those are incorporated by that reference into your charter. So 35 feet, even when you see 35 feet in your charter, that doesn't mean 35 feet to the highest point. That means 35 feet to that roof as defined by your land development regulations. That's where Larry's calculations come in and get incorporated into that charter conversation, because it's not just the LDRs, it's your charter also.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, that sums up the building height. Some items that we haven't discussed yet, the city engineer hasn't weighed in yet, and the landscape plans and the site lighting, as you mentioned, has not been provided yet. We discussed, if this moves forward, binding the lots. So that's been part of the record. The building length, Larry, our LDRs talk about the building can't be any longer than 150 feet. That's been addressed by Joe. You concur that this meets?
Yes.
Okay. So that's also been discussed. I just had a question for Zoe, and you might be able to answer this, Joe. I saw in the application that it was Geraldine Charles LLC in some places as the owner, and then I saw other places where it was Zoe as the owner. Are we talking about one and the same Zoe? Okay. Again, the survey should read south, not north central. Question, Joe. You show site improvements on our plan to Veterans Park with a retractable band shell, and then street improvements one way. Is that something that you're proposing to do? That's, to me, that hasn't brought up yet, so I wanted to get on the record. Who exactly is paying for that? Is that going to be on your dime, or is that the city requesting because you're using, obviously, Veterans Park underneath for water retention?
Correct. I mean, once we determine the amount of retention that we actually need for this project, it made some sense for us to do it underground in the park. Also, we're talking with the civil engineer, we had this conversation with Fred too, that we're going to be storing more water than is required for our site to help the overall area. So with allowing us to use that small area for these chambers, obviously working with the park, we should bring the park up to better standards for future use. Today, we're not here to decide what's in the park. Is it a band shell? Is it just a platform? Those types of things. But I think for a successful development, as I mentioned, to make this a project that is on the beach versus a view of the beach, I think that should be part of it. I think some further discussions could be handled with the city, not only with the park in terms of cost, but the roadway systems, the parallel parking, how the sidewalk works to be part of a right-of-way because of liability issues. So I think there's a lot more homework and discussions on those detailed type of areas.
Okay, and the reason I bring it up, obviously, we want to try and know exactly what we're talking about approving. This is final site plan approval, and we're recommending to the city. So these are issues that are going to need to be finalized between this board recommending and whenever it gets to the commission. So it's food for thought that needs to be addressed. I'm sure it's going to be brought up at the commission level also.
Yes, well, I agree with you.
Okay. Other than that, those are my questions and concerns, and I appreciate it. I'll turn it over to the rest of the board. Comments? Scott?
Thank you, everyone, for your time. It's a good presentation, and just a couple of questions. I like what I see. I think it's certainly necessary for this area. I have a question for Zoe, and I guess the bottom line is, you plan on staying with the project throughout, or are you done when it's done? And I don't know if you're required to answer that or not, but I like what you're doing. I like where you're going with it, and I like your passion. I knew your folks here. I know you've been here for a long time, and I'd like for you to stay with it, but I don't know what your plans are with it. So
Well, that's still to be determined, but I'm doing the best we can to try to help mold it and make sure that it goes forward, taking in all those characteristics. And there was for instance, there's a Spring Hill Suites in New Smyrna, and they're part of a project called the Blue Community, and it incorporates 17 different aspects of environmental awareness. And I'm hoping, and that's why Amy brought the thing about the soap, is I want to make sure that it does embody what the future needs, and it isn't something that will be antiquated right away. So I can't answer that question at this time, but I'm helping as best I can. We are.
okay.
Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Joanne?
I too love the project. My husband hates change, and when I had the plans out, he said, "Wow, that looks fabulous. Wouldn't it be great to have a bar to go to in the middle of town?" So it's a great looking project. I had concerns about parking, but you've addressed it, and the water and sewer. So thank you very much. I'm excited.
Kathy?
Okay, I did talk to Larry, and we talked about the height, and he cleared that up for me. But I just have, will people still use the park for First Fridays?
Nothing will change with
So
the park.
it's going to be our park?
It's a city park.
And then we're going to move to the beach. Do we lose our boardwalk?
Go ahead.
At that section, that parcel is owned by us with the farmer's market, as it's called, or the old hotel property. And there is no boardwalk there. There's just a sidewalk. And so it wouldn't affect that. There's no continuation of the actual boardwalk that the state added.
So that's where the tables are with the
Nope, there's just like low ropes because people can pull up and look at the waves or whatever. So it shouldn't affect that. And the state would have to be involved at that level, of course, too.
right, because the beach is everybody's, right.
And one thing I want to mention, that we hope that these event rooms will be utilized by the museum and weddings and everything. This is for everyone to use and to have a great view. So, please keep that in mind. It's not going to be an exclusive place that basically you close the doors and no one is allowed in. It's supposed to be communal. So.
And I do love it. It's just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roseanne?
I echo everyone's comments that I love the project, and I just want to especially thank you, Larry, for all the work that has gone into this to make it have the character that it has. I do believe that, well, all in all, it's wonderful. There's just some details that I had some questions about. And one of them is what I think you were just alluding to, and I was trying to find the picture in the rendering where it showed down on the beach, the umbrellas and the lounge chairs and like the walkovers with a little curvy wooden boardwalk. And that, where you have those lounge chairs and those renderings, that's where Flagler Beach surfs. That's our public beach. So how would that be the resort when it's the heart of Flagler Beach?
Well, as Zoe mentioned, there's a piece of property there that is part of this parcel. Depending on what we can do there, my thoughts are that by building this project, we're going to have a lot of sand coming out of the piece of property for the parking garage underneath it. So I'm hopeful that the Army Corps of Engineers and the people who are involved on the beach area would work with us somehow to utilize the materials we're taking out of there to strengthen the beach. I think it would be wonderful to have something down on the beach that the people who are guests at the hotel can utilize. Hopefully, we cannot go further than our boundaries at that point. I don't know exactly where the water is in terms of the beach and that parcel of land. So again, it's something more to look at and develop it. It could be turned down very quickly when we request it. Again, just like the park, I'm demonstrating some thought process on what it could be. I'm just adding that as well to the mix.
Well, I would just like to get on the record my concern about that, because many of us own property on A1A and own onto the beach, but we don't make any attempt to use that for our own use. That's the character of Flagler Beach that everyone is so concerned about protecting, is our public beach that's open to everybody. So I just want to get on the record that that's very important to the heart of Flagler Beach, down on the area, on the beach there.
Roseanne, those parcels generally go down to the mean high water line.
Right.
East of A1A parcels.
Right. Thank you, Penny. Also have just a question. You guys may not have this worked out yet, but if you're going to be having the chamber storage for the drainage for a private project under a public park, I just wonder how that works, if that's a private public partnership, or how access to that works. Maybe those are details that need to be worked out.
Well,
But
yes, they definitely do have to be worked out, and also the volume of the water and such. The concept is that in order to create something like we're trying to demonstrate here tonight, there's opportunities not only in the park, but in the right-of-ways and such like that to store water. Brian's mentioned to me as we designed the project that he's done similar types of situations where we have used parks adjacent to facilities and such. So I'm sure there's a mechanism to accomplish that.
Could I interrupt you a second?
Yeah,
Drew, do
go
you
ahead.
have any thoughts on
I was
this?
just going to add that one of the components of that, and I think I heard you mention your bonding strength. There'd be bonding involved in that to ensure that maintenance, everything was maintained, whatever the deal that was done. That there was, at the end of the day, a bond in place also to ensure protection for the infrastructure and the city's involvement in it.
Okay. On Central Avenue, on the east side of Central, it looked to me like the sidewalk was moved to the east in order to accommodate the angled parking. And it looked like, therefore, Veterans Park was made smaller. Do we know how much we took from Veterans Park in order to move that sidewalk?
Well, the intent wasn't to move the sidewalk. The public sidewalk needs to be in the right-of-way. Usually the back of sidewalks is your property line. With the 45-degree parking that Larry's discussed with me, we laid it out, and 45-degree parking with a 14 drive lane will not fit in a 50-foot right-of-way. So the parking angle has to be between 30 and 45. Then, depending on the width of your sidewalks, that also has to be worked out. If the city requires a 5-foot sidewalk, we've done 4-foot sidewalks just to get pedestrians through on a sidewalk, but it's always part of a larger plaza type of an area. Just as I showed you in those old slides, we don't want to walk down a 4-foot narrow sidewalk with a building right next to it, especially on Central and Moody. So the goal is not to move things, is to understand how we can accomplish this. How can we accomplish more parking along those right-of-ways? Again, a lot more survey work has to be done to understand what exists there. Where are all these components right now? I do notice that, some parking is deep off of Central in terms of going near the park and such, where I just parked tonight. And again, with more information, we can answer your questions totally. But we've done this in a number of different ways because the liability of a public sidewalk is we've created easements. We've moved property lines. We may have to add to the right-of-way. Maybe what happens, and I mentioned this to Larry earlier today, discussing that as long as my setbacks don't move, the building doesn't move conceptually, we can move a property line and incorporate the diagonal parking at a 45 or close to that dimension with the proper sidewalk that's in the right-of-way. So I think there's a lot of mechanisms to accomplish this. You notice the survey even with saying that it's North Central, how old that survey is, and this is the type of data that we'll need to continue in order to bring the proper answers prior to going to council.
I'm all for the angled parking. I think it makes a lot of sense. We talked about it years ago in the parking committee. That was one of the ideas, that to improve parking. But I just know that prior to COVID, our First Friday events, we were filling Veterans Park, and we need that open space in the park as much as possible. Just, I know this may not be the meeting to address everything about the park, but since it is a final site plan approval, just open space in the park is very important to the city. Also on Central, the sidewalk on the west side along the hotel, is that a public sidewalk? Because it just looks like it's part of the hotel, but is that just also a public sidewalk, or how does that work?
Yes, I mean, again, it's the same thing I just mentioned. It will be a public sidewalk with an extension into our property, because we created an arcade there with the cover there, the entrance into the community space below it, I'm calling a tavern, and also the outdoor space that could be utilized for different types of events and/or for seating and such like that. If you're having a gathering for some type of family event, you can use the little outdoor area where we have the umbrellas shown, and also using the interior space as well. So I'm trying to take away from a little 5-foot sidewalk that you're walking down like a machine and open it up, because you're going to have a lot of people circulate through this. Because today, if you're walking from one point to the other, you probably walk across the middle of this property to get to the other side. So we're going to have people circulate around it, and I'm very concerned about safety there. I mentioned to Larry with the diagonal parking and such like that, we've got to protect people from hitting the gas versus the brake. Those are the types of things here. Look, so the more distance we have from the vehicle, I think the safer it would be.
Okay. Do you plan to charge hotel guests to park in the parking?
No. This is not downtown New York or Boston.
So just for the record, because a lot of hotel chains do that, if you're gonna stay overnight and park a car underneath, there's like $25 or $30 or whatever it is added to your bill.
Mm-hmm.
And if a deal is made with a chain, they might decide to do that, right?
Well, we're trying to set up these guidelines. She's spoken to a lot of different chains in the last 4 years or so, and I think these are some criteria that if the flag wants to be here, parking is a concern. The worst thing is to show up your hotel and there's no place to park your vehicle. And that's why I went to the great lengths of providing the number of parking spaces we did. So I don't think that's fair in terms of an area that doesn't have 4 or 5-story parking garages and garages that go underground. You're a beach town. And I think that any type of chain would respect that.
Well, I just want to say for the record that I'm concerned that if somebody were to charge for parking, the guests of the hotel would park on our right-of-ways for free, since we have our free parking throughout the city on right-of-ways. So I think if there were to be a charge in that garage, that could create a real problem for the city with parking.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, since the parking is scarce around the area.
Yeah. And I think that all my other questions, the height, I totally get that about the average. So yeah, I think that's it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roseanne. Paul?
Most of my questions were answered. I was excited to see this project when you guys came here a year ago, and I appreciate you taking the time to, instead of rushing it through, you really took your time, and Zoe, all your diligence and hard work. I think that's a testament of what Flagler Beach really is all about. My only question, I just wanted to get a clarification on the second drawing where the beach is. It looks like they're cement walkovers, or is it like stairs, or is it going to be a bunch of individual walkovers?
Well, again, right now it's a concept to say, how can we utilize this? Again, attracting a national chain, and we've already heard these comments that it turned from a hotel with a view to a beachfront hotel. And what are the opportunities of using that area? And again, we could be turned down very quickly with the government agencies we have to go through. I'm more concentrated on the site that we have in our hand and demonstrating to you some thoughts of what could be. And that's the purpose of demonstrating that.
Thank you. And then those roads have they already been approved to go one way?
Not to my knowledge. I think Larry could probably answer that a little bit better.
No, this is something the city would have to consider.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I wish you guys best of luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Joseph?
So, overall, when I first saw the project, microphone, yeah, overall, when I first saw the project, I was thinking it was big, expansive. Then when I sat with Larry and started to review the land development code and understand, and here I am the architect, understand what we can do, I realized that it really is a well-crafted and planned out plan. But I've been here 17 years, and all I've been hearing about is boutique hotel, boutique hotel, boutique hotel, and so I looked up the definition of boutique hotel. The simplest definition of a boutique hotel is small, sophisticated, fashionable business or establishment. So when you break up these elements into different sections, as you have, it becomes a smaller element. When you look at the architectural guidelines that we have, which is classical revival, coastal, craftsman, and cracker style of architecture, you've implemented those different categories in the facade, you undulated it, and you broke it up into a way where it doesn't seem like that big a building. So you have the main parking area, and then you got the main hotel, then you got the Veterans Park, and then the extension onto the beach. And I wish you a lot of luck with dealing with DEP on the beach issue, but you never know. Things
gotta ask.
You never know. It could happen. So I really understand all of the elements of it. Civil engineering, water drainage, all that stuff, we can work all that out. Utilizing Veterans Park for the water storage, maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. But if this development works, we're redesigning streets and one-way and parking. Perhaps some of that could be underground with traffic lids and underground storage. It's not, if for some reason there's some issue you don't want to go into the park, or it would be easier. So all those things I understand. I counted something like 98 rooms, I believe. And I think you can have 90 to 100 rooms, including suites. I think I came up with 98. Somewhere I thought I read 97, but I got 98.
Well, we'll count them again.
Yeah. I love it. I think the elements are good. The one concern I have, and it's just my personal opinion, is the event room is on the smaller side. It's 2281 square feet. That'll hold just about a wedding party of 80, maybe. And in my mind, the original hotel had this beautiful fifth floor panorama. Now I was never there, but from what I have heard and people walking through it, and if we only need 90 to capture 90 rooms to be the minimum, maybe somehow that event room could double in size, and then you could have a 200-person wedding or a 400-person conference, and I'm sure there's ways to manipulate that. I love the fact that you really spent time working with Larry, and kudos to Larry, because I saw where you started, and I saw where you ended up. And without this man, it wouldn't be this quality of a project. My only concern, and I would just want this to be maybe when we go to move forward.
Condition.
What's that?
Condition?
Condition, thank you, yes, condition. And it might be the right solution that you have, but I think it deserves maybe another look, is the corner entry to the hotel. I love the spiral stair, I love the open colonnade. I'm not quite sure the architecture captures Flagler Beach, but a workshop might be a condition that we could just go back and look at that and see if that's the absolute right proportion scale. Well, I think the proportion scale is good. I just wonder if it's the right style of architecture. That's my opinion. So maybe we take further consideration just to look at the corner. I like the antiquity of the entry, which looks like the old hotel, that little portion in the front and the middle at the pool deck. I like those little elements that you've picked up, like the Flagler Beach Resort, the parapet. I like how you broke up the hotel on 100 with those other white facades in the parapet, which is classical revival. I think you got a little of everything, classical revival, some coastal, not so much craftsman, but maybe we could consider the entry a little craftsmanish. But that would be a condition that I would like to see, is maybe a little workshop or something on that corner, because that's prominent in the highest part. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of negotiations and things with the city and who pays for the streets to be redesigned and how does all that work out. But you know what? Overall, you shoot for the stars, and we got a project here that's really viable. I love the fact that you put together a team, and this is really exciting. The other thing I want people to understand too is you have this public sidewalk on 100, but then you got about 15 feet of green space before you even get to the brick and mortar, the hardscape, the building. So we've really, working with Larry, you really did a great job taking it back off the street and creating this really luxurious landscape area all the way around the whole site. I think that's all I've got right now.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Joseph, and we did talk about the little charrette, and I think that'd be very helpful with your time here and what I've seen you done, which is very successful designs and very well detailed. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of little details to work out. Hopefully we have a great approval tonight so that we can move forward and spend the additional monies and research and such that we need to develop prior to, getting your final approval from the city. Thank you, Joseph.
Kathy had a question for you.
This popped in my head as we were all talking. Is parking, have you got parking planned for the restaurant and the event room?
Well, the restaurant, there's no restaurant plan for this, it's not in my tabulations.
Okay.
The tavern, I just call that because the tavern's like a community area, and that's why I just picked the name, as we always do on projects. And as Joseph asked me about the size of the space upstairs, again, I was trying to keep the higher part of the buildings a little bit smaller. And you also mentioned about the idea of, 2 rooms disappear, 2 cores disappear, how this could become a little bit larger. And then I mentioned, well, the tavern too, the downstairs space can be utilized for larger gatherings as well.
So you would sort of, somebody would buy that, or they would rent it, and they would, if they wanted to have.
Yeah, just like you would rent a space in a hotel to have a wedding, they would rent that kind of a space too. It might be.
I do love that idea.
Yeah. I think that would work out nice. And then it's on the ground. A lot more people can interact and such like that for a larger gathering versus up and down an elevator. So.
But we probably don't have parking planned for that, right? At the moment, there's no. Okay.
Larry, did you have any other comments?
No, other than I'd like to pick up on what Mr. Pizzulli said, and perhaps between now and the city commission meeting, that maybe Joe can come up with a couple of little vignette sketches for the corner. This is scheduled to go to the city commission December 10th, which is not too much time, but even if it's just a sketch, just to address that. And I have to say this, when I was talking with planning board member Catherine Fine today, we brought up the corner, and she mentioned to me that she kind of liked the rounded corner, and I said, well, you know how I feel. And she says, well, you're always stuck on that diagonal, so the 45-degree angle. And I'm not saying it's the way it has to be or should be. I think what Joseph Pasquale has done here with his team has really softened that corner. It has a look of elegance to it, but me personally, I'm kind of on board with Joseph Pazzulli on this one, that I think a little more flair of older Flagler Beach and still be done in a softened manner, at least to investigate that, if that could be done in, like I say, not in a rendition like this, but perhaps something very basic and conceptual, just to give an idea of what it could look like with a different approach.
No, I agree with you, Larry, and, obviously, you work very diligently with this thing. Where can you get a report on a Sunday morning from a planner? So we worked well together on that, and more than happy to work with Joseph and our team to develop that corner. But I did give you two 45-degree corners down on the other end of the building.
I noticed that.
Okay.
See, I am smiling under that.
Yeah, we all are.
All righty. Larry, we also appreciate, I know I had seen the earlier renditions of this, and this project has come a long, long way. I think if this moves forward, it will be the crown jewel of our downtown area. It's really, really pops out at you. It's beautiful as far as I'm concerned. There has been a lot of issues that have been brought up. Joe, would you be willing to work with Larry Torino and also the architect on what you had mentioned regarding that area between now and commission meeting? I think the rest of the project is just stunning. A couple of concerns that I made notes of that need to be worked out, obviously, before it gets to the commission, because this is final site approval request. The sidewalk issue was brought up. The cost as far as the improvements go, both to the street and the Veterans Park. I discussed with Drew before the meeting about a bond, if that was a possibility. Roseanne brought up the concern about actually making a portion of the beach private. I'm not sure how that's going to go over with the commission, because we've never, ever addressed that before. So that's something that needs to be certainly discussed. Who pays for what? So there's a lot of moving parts here. If we move this forward, this does need to be addressed between now and the commission meeting. So I guess the question I have for the board, are we comfortable going ahead and moving this forward with the commission, with the conditions that we discussed between now and the city commission meeting? Drew, are you comfortable if we bring those out?
So as far as when you say conditions, what you're talking about is for a developer to look harder at those items, not really, there's not any specific requirement you're looking for, just that they take a look and consider those things and beef up their information a little bit, that for commission's benefit.
Yeah, because there's a good chance that, there's a couple commissioners here tonight, there's a good chance they're going to buy into some of the issues that we brought up. Again, this is only a recommending board, but I would definitely be prepared to answer those questions.
No, I agree with you 100%. I don't want to come to the commission without having these answers. And as I mentioned before, the overall concept does incorporate all the way from our site to the ocean. We can come back and just look at our site and what to develop there. And some more homework done in terms of drainage, the amount of drainage, the size of all these things, I could get some better answers for you.
Okay. All right, board, what is the pleasure of the board?
I would love to make the motion. You'll have to help me, Drew.
Recommend? Just start it with recommend.
Can I just say that I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of SP 2012-02. I don't have to say anything else, do I?
With the applicant to address those items raised by the board during its discussion to give further detail to the city commission.
Okay, and I saw him writing everything down, so you will address those issues. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Passes unanimously. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very detailed.
Thank you very much for your time.
All righty, pull the agenda out here. Let's let the room clear a second.
I guess he's here.
Okay, last item on the agenda, board member comments. Are there any board member comments?
Not for me.
All right, I'd just like to make one comment. I was at the Gardens Project, and I want to compliment Drew, Larry, and Eric Cooley for their presentation. It was very, very good and very well thought out, very factual. I'm not sure what impact it made, but you guys did a great job. Just wanted to get that on the record. All right, having said that, if there's no other board member comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, board members.
Bonnie, do you want these packets, Bonnie?
Yeah.
We have the surveys to give to Penny and everything else.
I'll leave you with everything. You better watch out on your way to your car.
Well-run meeting, Don. I liked how you,
Thank you.
really wrote everybody's comments.
Bye, everybody. Have a good, well, we'll see. This is December.